All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the comparison video of the CBR650R versus all of its competitors. Lucky for you, on today's list, I have ridden every single one of the motorcycles we will be comparing this bike against today. I've even owned almost all of them, so I have lots of experience to talk about this comparison today. This motorcycle is unique in the marketplace. It's a little bit bigger, it's got an inline-4 engine, and it has that crazy E-clutch system on it. So we're gonna see how it compares to the competition. Today we're gonna be putting this bike up against the Yamaha R7, the Ninja 650, the RS660, the Daytona 660, and the GSX-8R. We're gonna look at what makes this bike better or worse than those motorcycles, my own opinion on which one I would pick in the category, and just all the ins and outs that I can give you. It's gonna be a long video, sit back and relax, let's talk through all the comparisons. But really quick, if you're eyeing this motorcycle, think that it could be the one for you, I'm actually giving this bike away on yammynoob.co. Head to the website and become a member right now to lock in your best chance to win. This bike is only available for the month of April. It is a short sweepstakes, so make sure you get entered. We don't pay for any advertising for these sweepstakes, so you guys in the audience that see this on YouTube are really the only people to get a chance to win this bike. So head to the website, become a member, get your chances locked and loaded, and let's get started. All right, let's begin with the Suzuki GSX-8R. This is a motorcycle I have the most recent experience with. I purchased that bike as a giveaway bike last year, logged a lot of miles, modified it, really got to understand the motorcycle. The only thing I didn't get to do was take the bike on track. My schedule at the time did not allow for it. So how does that bike compare to this one? Well, the GSX-8R has a slightly larger engine, a 776cc parallel twin. It makes 82 horsepower at 8,500 RPM, down about 12 horsepower peak from this machine. However, it makes 57 foot-pounds of torque at 6,800 RPM, meaning it's torqueier. The GSX-8R is one of the new 270-degree parallel twins doing the thing that everybody else is doing in the marketplace today, and it makes a really nice exhaust note, it punches really nice, and it's a really complete motorcycle. The GSX-8R is a little bit lighter at 445 pounds versus the 466 of the CBR over here, and I do think that the GSX-8R comes in some pretty cool colors. You have the yellow, the blue, and the silver, and this motorcycle, as far as I know, you can only get it in red here in North America. It has an identical 31.9-inch seat height, and ergonomically is almost the exact same as this motorcycle. They both present as full-sized machines. Really, I think if you're looking at this bike, the GSX-8R should be right up against your comparison because that is the closest bike in the segment in terms of its ethos, in terms of what the bike is trying to do, this kind of like do anything, almost sport touring style motorcycle, kind of an old school vibe to both machines. But the one area that the GSX-8R is different is that it's a brand new engine, brand new platform, and this is a little bit long in the tooth. This 649cc inline-4 is a little bit older, and it's going to be a machine that's just gonna feel a little bit outdated. The GSX-8R comes standard with the TFT display, just like this bike, a quick shifter up and down, which is kind of similar to what the E-clutch can offer here. It obviously does not have the E-clutch system that is unique to the CBR650R, and of course the GSX-8R also has traction control and ABS. The price for the GSX-8R is $9,439, so a couple $100 cheaper than the CBR650R. So between those two motorcycles, I think I'd have to pick the GSX-8R. It just feels a little fresher, a little newer, a little bit more pep in its step, and I just preferred it over riding this machine. But again, the secret thing that this bike has is that inline-4 engine. If you really want an inline-4, this is the way to go. Okay, let's move on to talking about the Yamaha R7 and the RS660. The reason I want to talk about both at the same time, I will talk about them independently, is that I feel like the R7 and RS660 are spiritually different than the CBR650R and the GSX-8R. Both the R7 and RS660 are substantially lighter than the CBR650R and the GSX-8R. We're talking to the tune of 40 to 50 to 55 pounds lighter than those machines. Combine that with the fact that they both have parallel twin engines, much higher seat heights, and much more aggressive ergonomic setups, I really think the R7 and RS660 are kind of their own thing in this not so super sport category. If you have the chance, go to a dealership and sit on one of these and then sit on a Yamaha R7. You'll quickly understand that they're very different bikes trying to do very different things. The R7 and R660 really are twins cup bikes. They kind of fit in that Moto America mold. They're two-cylinder, true blue sport bikes. They're not quite as serious as a proper super sport machine, of course. They're not quite as hard-edged. So if you are cross-shopping the CBR650R to the R7 or the R660, know that they are pretty different types of motorcycles. So let's start talking about the R7. This has been one of Yamaha's best sellers for the last few years. It totally made sense why they launched this bike. I feel like it's dawned an entirely new category of squid, which has been pretty cool to see. It features the absolute bulletproof, tried and true 689cc CP2 motor. You guys know I'm a huge fan of that engine. It makes 72 horsepower and 49 foot-pounds of torque. Redline is right at around 10,000 RPM for the R7, and so this motorcycle does not rev out as much as this bike, and of course being a parallel twin has a totally different nature to this silky smooth inline 4 that you find in this bike. Wet weight is 414 pounds, and with a seat height of 32.9 inches, this is a very serious machine. But the R7 comes pretty bare bones. I'm actually curious to see if Yamaha is going to imbue some of the new generation MT-07 components into the R7 and kind of bring it back up to spec. I wouldn't be surprised if this motorcycle gets an update for the 2026 model year with the new TFT, the new ride-by-wire system, and some other features that you find in the new MT-07 that really should be in the R7 as well. Price for the R7 is $9,199, which in all honesty is a little expensive for what you're getting. I mean, for a couple $100 more, you get an inline 4 motor, E-clutch, TFT. There's a lot of features in the CBR650R that just makes the R7 look a little bit bare bones. So if you are cross-shopping this bike and the R7, I really would recommend sitting on both and if possible, riding both, because you'll understand that this motorcycle is certainly tuned for long distance road riding, commuting, being friendly around town. And the R7 really is an R-bike product. It's pretty serious, it's pretty aggressive, and it's a pretty spicy little meatball. Now let's talk about the RS660. And I'll tell you right now, in all the motorcycles we're talking about today, this is my #1 pick. And it's not just because I'm an Aprilia fanboy, even though I am a little bit, but ever since I rode this motorcycle back in 2021, owned it as a giveaway bike, I just feel like there is no bike on the market that does what the RS660 does as well as the RS660 does. The point I want to make about the RS660 is that it doesn't share platforming with a naked bike. It's not coming off a parallel twin from a naked bike, a steel tubular frame from a naked bike. The RS660 was the first to really do this not so super sport thing, and it really did it best because it legitimately blends a commuter motorcycle and a super sport motorcycle in a package that works for basically anybody. It has slightly raised clip-ons, which makes it pretty much as comfortable as this machine. It's narrow through the tank, it's lightweight, it's peppy, it's fun. It actually revs out to a little over 11,000 RPM, which is great for a parallel twin, and makes 100 horsepower, which is awesome. The RS660 was one of the few bikes that I owned that I was like, man, you could really like just own this motorcycle for so many years and enjoy it for so much. It's comfortable to ride on road, it's super capable on track right out of the box, and I really think it's a knockout hit in this category. But you do have to pay to play. The RS660 starts at $11,549, and they just updated it for the new model year with some new features as well, and that price may go up a little bit by the time this video goes live. We haven't seen the pricing just yet. With a 32.3-inch seat height, it's actually not as aggressive as the R7 in terms of its ergonomics, which is kind of strange. With those slightly raised clip-ons, a slightly lower seat, and a really narrow gas tank, the RS660 really is just a very pleasant place to sit. It has a TFT display, an IMU, a quick shifter up and down, cornering ABS, a lot of great features on this motorcycle, and I think the only downside is that you are having to pay a little bit more over the CBR650R. For my type of riding and what I like with motorcycles, I would pick an RS660 over a CBR650R virtually any day of the week. You're gonna get more track day performance, you're gonna get better on-road performance. The only downside is it's a little bit more expensive. Aprilia reliability is not nearly as good as Honda's. That's just a fact, we know that. But it is a really stellar motorcycle, and I really don't think you could go wrong with it. And if you were cross-shopping between the two, my personal pick would be the RS660. All right, let's move on to one of the more interesting motorcycles in this category, and a bike that may be right for you if you're kind of stuck between a lot of these different motorcycles, and that's the Daytona 660. Now, I mentioned the RS660 was a true blend between super sport performance, something like a ZX6 or an R6, and a commuter bike like a CB500 or something like that. It really splits the difference. The Daytona 660 splits the difference between a CBR650R and an RS660. It's much more sporty in its nature and its delivery than a CBR650R. Remember, this bike is pretty tame, it's pretty easygoing, it's a nice commuter bike, it just happens to make a sweet screaming inline four sound. And then all the way on the other end, you have the RS660, which has a twin spar aluminum frame, 100 horsepower, like all this great tech and features. You know, it's a proper little sport bike that happens to be a little bit more comfortable to ride. The Daytona 660 really is between the both of them. Not only in cylinder counts, because it has a 3-cylinder motor, but also the way it goes down the road. It has a 660cc 3-cylinder motor making 95 horsepower. It also makes 51 foot-pounds of torque and redlines at 12,650 RPM, which is pretty spicy for this category. So you got top-end revs, nice amount of power, broad torque in the middle. You're kind of getting the best of all worlds from both an inline four perspective and the parallel twin, and you have a higher rev ceiling than this inline four, so it's a pretty sweet ride. Best of all, the price is $9,595, so a few $100 less than this machine. Now, the Daytona 660 is sharing, obviously, a ton of components from the Trident 660, Triumph's intermediate level naked motorcycle. The Daytona is a little portly at 443 pounds, but again, splitting that difference between a ultra lightweight RS660 and the CBR650R over here. It has a 31.9-inch seat height, identical to the CBR650R. It fits nice and narrow through the gas tank, and I think it's a pretty well-sized motorcycle. It doesn't feel quite as large and plus-sized as the CBR650R and GSX-8R do. However, if you guys did see my dedicated review of the Daytona 660, you know that I didn't exactly fall in love with it. I thought the dash was a little cheap for what it was. A lot of the componentry felt kind of cheap to me, and it kind of belied that premium fit and finish we've come to expect from Triumph products. You can clearly see they tried to meet a price point. I think the seat out of the cockpit of the CBR650R is superior to the Daytona 660, and I think that because it's a more pleasant bike to ride in general, to be honest, I would kind of prefer the inline four sound in the CBR650R over the Daytona 660, which again, I know many of you think that I'm a Triumph diehard, but I wasn't really that impressed with the 660. But again, it does split the difference between RS660 and CBR650R. So if you're kind of not really able to pick between those two, you don't know how sporty you want to be, I think the Daytona is a great spot to be. The last motorcycle, sort of an honorable mention, is Kawasaki's Ninja 650. We've done a few videos testing this motorcycle, and I've always walked away thinking it's the most long in the tooth, somewhat poorly executed, sloppy, very old feeling 650 class bike. I don't think it produces anything in the category to warrant buying it over anything else. It is the cheapest bike in the category by far. It costs $82.99 brand new. It does come with the TFT. It does have some nice out of the cockpit feels. You can get it in some pretty flashy paint schemes. But ultimately, if you ride that motorcycle and then ride any other bike in this category, you're gonna get blown away completely. You'll be like, wow, why would you buy a Ninja 650? One of the main reasons is the motor, unfortunately. The Ninja 650 uses a 649cc parallel twin that has a 180-degree crank, so you don't get the characterful, barky 270-degree crank thing. It makes 67 horsepower and 48 foot-pounds of torque. So that motorcycle is down nearly 30 horsepower over the CBR 650R. It has quite literally 67% of the power of an RS 660 that also uses a similar displacement parallel twin. So hopefully you guys understand that I'm not trying to dog on the 650, and I think that if you bought a Ninja 650 as your first motorcycle, a stepping stone bike, whatever you want, I think it's a great choice. I just think that when you look at all the other bikes in the category, there's really no reason to buy one brand new versus these other motorcycles where you get a whole lot more bang for buck. So that's my comparison for today. Let's wrap up what we learned. In all the bikes I mentioned today, the RS660 is my clear favorite. I think it does everything the best out of all these motorcycles. It has the most character, most track performance, most fun, willing, engine and playful nature. I just think that that bike is a great motorcycle, and I would love to own one over all these other bikes. When you look at this bike versus the others, I think the GSX-8R is its closest competitor, and I would pick a GSX-8R over the CBR650R. I had more fun with that bike. I thought it was more usable, a little more versatile. This bike does make inline four sounds though, so I don't want to discount that. If that is important to you, I certainly think you should get this bike, because if you put a pipe on this thing, it sounds wicked, sounds great, does the inline four thing, sounds like a real sport bike. If that's important to you, you gotta get this motorcycle. R7 and RS660 are, to me, spiritually very different than this motorcycle. I prefer that type of bike over this one, but if you are looking at all these motorcycles, just know that those are two very different types of machines over this bike. The Daytona 660 is a great compromise between all of the motorcycles, and if you could go and check out that one, I think that would do you very well. Got a nice screaming inline 3. It makes a great sound. It is genuinely a very good motorcycle. It's not my preferred bike on this list for today. And of course, the Ninja 650, as I mentioned, probably not the right pick for this category. Hope you guys enjoyed my comprehensive take on all the motorcycles that this bike competes against. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you think I got anything wrong or if you disagree with my takes. Remember, I've ridden and owned virtually all of the motorcycles on this list, so I'm speaking from a place of experience and understanding. If you guys go to my website, enter for this giveaway CBR650R that's sitting right next to me over here. It's a fantastic bike, makes all the right sounds, wonderful commuter machine, and really nice feel out of the cockpit. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later. Keep watching Yami Noob.